Hi everyone, I'm Sandy and welcome back to my channel. Today I have my ranking video for you for the BookTube Prize Octafinal Round 2023. If you're not familiar with the BookTube Prize, I will leave it linked in the description below for you so you can go and check it out. Please definitely go and subscribe over to the BookTube Prize, because that's where all of the announcements come out, all the categories and the selections come out on that channel, and it is a wonderful and really fun event. The BookTube Prize is a literary prize where the judges are people in this community, in the BookTube community, the Bookstagram community, commenters. You don't have to have a channel in order to judge, and it has been so much fun. This is my second year judging it, and it has been amazing. I usually find some kind of a book that I might not have read through the BookTube Prize judging, which is part of the reason why I like doing it. Plus, you know, that fear of missing out thing. I don't want to miss out on judging the BookTube Prize. This year, I judged nonfiction for my first round. And it's more specifically, nonfiction section E. Yes, section E is what I judged. Now, I would say this particular section doesn't necessarily have a really bad book on it, but there were a couple that didn't really work for me. And most of these I got either through the library or I had it as a digital copy. So I'll be sure and throw a book cover up here for you so you can see what books I read. Last year I had done some stuff recording the responses or the feelings about the book after I read it. This year I only did that for one book. I might throw some of that footage in here. We'll see. But these are my rankings. In number 6 place, I have Super Infinite, The Transformation of John Donne by Katherine Rundell. This book is all about the English poet and author of John Donne, who wrote, I believe, in the 17th and 18th century. I'd have to go back and double check those dates. And I am not familiar with John Donne. I know nothing about him. I don't think I've ever ever read a piece of poetry, a piece of his writing. So I went into this book very, very blind. And unfortunately, the reason why I ended up in my 6th spot is that the writing did not make me care enough about him. I didn't get any of his poetry in the beginning to find out why I should be someone, or this should be someone I would want to know more about. For me, the writing never got me. It never pulled me in. I struggled through this book. It's not my favorite book. It was nominated for a Young Writer Award this year, so there is a lot of praise for this particular book. It just wasn't a topic that I really was interested in, and the writing did not get me, did not pull me in to where I was like, yeah, this book needs to be higher on my rankings. It'll be really interesting to see where this particular book falls in whether or not it moves on into the next round. The book number 5 in my rankings is Thin Places by Kerri. I know I'm butchering that. I have looked it up. I have tried. I've listened to it. I cannot quite get the pronunciation of this, and I apologize. I tried. I really did. This particular book is a memoir set in Ireland in the town of Derry, center place for the times commonly referred to as the Troubles. So this book is all about her time, her growing up, her being in Northern Ireland during this time. It also has some components of it with how Brexit impacted things, about how just a lot of, but it really did go through her life quite a bit. It has a mixture of things in it. It has some poetry. It has some, political commentary about Derry, about Brexit, about a wide variety of different things. It discusses the term thin places and what that actually means. And it also has a component of nature writing in it. So it will switch into and talking about plants and things like that. Okay. The reason it ended up in my 5th spot is it was so all over the place for me. I couldn't quite connect with her and her story. I ended up not really knowing completely what her memoir, what her life was all about. And for me, that was just, I think maybe that might be me. I know I don't like stories that bounce all over the place. And this one just didn't give me the continuity that I was really looking for. All right, number 4 for me, I have as an actual physical copy here, and it is G-Man, J. Edgar Hoover, and the Making of the American Century by Beverly Gage. This is an 800-page plus book. I'm actually kind of surprised it ended up in the number 4 spot. I am not a history person. I don't love history so much. I'm not going out and finding history books. I read nonfiction, but I don't read, necessarily about presidents or characters like, or people like J. Edgar Hoover. So this was a lot for me, 800 plus pages. It's the last book I finished, I believe, out of my BookTube Prize reading. And this book goes into a lot of detail about J. Edgar Hoover. I mean, an excessive amount of detail. The author, Beverly Gage, spent 10 years researching this, and you can tell from her writing that she cares about this topic a great deal. That writing made it very, very clear that J. Edgar Hoover was a man who wanted very big control over his world and his space. He wanted control over the FBI, who was hired, who was not hired, policies and practices, and every opportunity he could get, he increased the power of the FBI. There's only one instance in the book where he really failed to increase the power, and that's actually when the CIA was created. There is, like I said, a huge amount of detail from every event, every important kind of political event that happened from the time he came into office to the time he left. He was in the FBI, head of the FBI, for 48 years. Unbelievable. I can't imagine in today's times that even being possible. He somehow was able to manage his way through multiple different presidents. A fascinating individual. Like I said, I don't know how you survive 48 years in any kind of political environment without having to declare yourself as being for one party or another. And then when presidents swapped in and out, how he was able to keep his position for so long. But the thing, why this ended up in the 4th spot, one, because it is big and it had a lot more detail than I personally needed about J. Edgar Hoover. The second, and in that, I can see it in that there'd be a chapter about 1 year of that time. Like, did I need a chapter per year? Probably not. But there was a lot of interesting points in history, his experience with the Kennedys, his experience with Richard Nixon, how much how Lyndon Johnson was a big fan of his, how he kind of kept power over that time, which I thought was really, really amazing. There was a lot to be made, a lot of speculation about his love life, about his sexual orientation in this book, about his longtime friend. In those parts, I understand why it would be in this book. It just wasn't something that I was super interested in learning necessarily about, but there was a lot of it in this particular book. But G-Man, I'm surprised it ended up in the 4th spot because this is the one I was looking forward to the least. All right, in spot number 3, I have this book, Eating to Extinction, The World's Rarest Foods and Why We Need to Save Them by Dan Saladino. This book is quite terrifying, frankly. It is all about all of the different species of plants, animals, across the board, fruits, liquor, different kinds of things that we have engineered out of existence in a lot of cases. One of the most compelling ones in this book is about wheat and how we have, not me, but us as a world have engineered wheat so much to kind of get high yield, high output, that we are now down to a very few numbers of different kinds of base genetic wheat, to the point that if there was a fungus or there was something that happened, we would jeopardize a large portion of the world's food supply. It's terrifying from that perspective. Some things in this book were really fascinating about why some things kind of got engineered out, and it had to do with things like our palates changed. So super sour fruits weren't as popular. Things like that, or how overfishing has decimated the fish in the ocean, some of the possible solutions for that. I loved each section of the book. The reason why I only ended up in my number 3 spot is because after about 15 different kinds of chapters about the different plants, animals that were in jeopardy, it's like, okay, I get it now. I do get it. There's nothing I can do to help this. Farmers can choose to farm farmers can choose in some cases to farm different grains, to farm different pieces, but they're often not as sellable. And that is a problem. Our whole food manufacturing component needs to be revised if we want to correct this problem. Dan Saladino is a food journalist, a BBC food journalist. And so he has a lot of access to a lot of people in this that you and I, as just regular people, would not have. So it was very in-depth. lots of information in it. It was a lot, and a lot of kind of repetition as far as, you know, foods going extinct, but it was very, very well done. And that's why it got my number 3 spot. Number 2 is The Trayvon Generation by Elizabeth Alexander. This actually started as an article in the New Yorker, as a very short article. And it got published, ended up being published as a book. So the article, as you can imagine, was very narrative heavy, text heavy. The book switches around. So it has the same narrative, but it also has pictures. It also has poetry. It has a lot of things added to it to help bring forward this particular topic. And the topic is one that is very difficult. And it is basically if you're not familiar with the title, Trayvon, it refers to Trayvon Martin, who was murdered in 2012. And those events and those kinds of events, it really talks about the impact that those events have on the young generation coming up today. And it's really difficult to read. Not so much, it doesn't go into graphic detail about all of the different events, but really on the effect it had on the young people. And I thought it was very, very well done. My only issue with it is that there wasn't enough of it. I wanted to read more. I needed more. And when I was looking at my rankings, where I had, you know, Eating to Extinction, which had too much, and G-Man that had too much, and this one that didn't have quite enough, it's like, I think that compliment of the book, I wanted more of it, tells me how much I really enjoyed reading that particular book. So that's why it ended up in the number 2 spot. Number 1 is Did You Hear Mammy Die by Seamus O'Reilly. Another memoir set in Ireland. I, again, have not heard of Seamus O'Reilly. And for me, this particular book ending up in the number 1 spot is very, very surprising. And one of the things is Seamus O'Reilly, he is one of 10 children, or has 10 siblings, and his mother died when he was 5. And this book really does explore his life and how losing his mother at such a young age impacted him, impacted his family. There is so much humor in this book. It absolutely made me laugh. It also made me cry, because it is exploring grief and what it means to lose a parent at 5. And one of the most poignant kind of lines in it is, how do you handle grief? It's like, be 5. He wasn't young enough, or he wasn't old enough to really understand what was going on. And the whole title of the book was basically based on him going around the funeral and asking people cheerfully, did you hear Mammy die? Over and over and over again. And I can imagine as an adult having a child do that and realizing they just don't understand. It would be very heartbreaking to do that. You can also see, he also brings up in there, like, he kind of missed out on the grieving process of when he lost his mom because he was so young. And it was very, very well done. Very, very funny in a lot of places, but it got me. There's one particular piece, which was an interaction between him and his dad. Very, very well done. I would love to read more by Seamus O'Reilly, and it gets my number 1 spot. That's my rankings. I don't know what actually made it through to the next round. I can't wait to see. We'll see how it goes. I'm very excited. I did sign up for round 2, but I don't know if I've been picked yet. I'll know by the time this video is out. And yeah, please go and check out the BookTube prize. Subscribe if you're not subscribed to that channel. And as always, like, comment, and subscribe. And until next time, everyone, thanks. Bye.